You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
This is Chip Gilchrist, voice of the Kingston Frontenacs. You're listening to OHL Overtime, an in-depth interview show highlighting the players, coaches, and broadcasters from around the Ontario Hockey League who make the league so great, as well as in-person coverage of events such as the OHL Playoffs, OHL Championship Series, OHL Combine, and more, exclusively on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Here's your program host, Brendan Caputo.
Welcome back to OHL Overtime right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. This is our OHL Western Conference Championship Series preview for the Wayne Gretzky Trophy between the London Knights and the Kitchener Rangers, rekindling another chapter in the storied rivalry between these two great franchises and great fan bases here in junior hockey in the Ontario Hockey League, as well as the Canadian Hockey League. We're going to be joined by Mike Farwell, the radio voice of the Kitchener Rangers in Segment 2. But in Segment 1 today, I'm pleased to welcome on the longtime voice of the London Knights on 980 CFPL. That would be Mike Stubbs. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. It's going to be another exciting chapter here and another deep playoff run for the London Knights, which we've become accustomed to over the years. But really appreciate your time today and just another, I guess, exciting time when you get down to the conference finals and the finals. There's nothing better in the junior hockey season.
The series don't get easier, Brandon. They do not get easier. You've got four really good teams who are now about to go head-to-head in two different series. And, hey, this is what it's about. I mean, this is where the playoffs get real. Your time and space is gone. If you get a chance, it had better go in. If you need a save, it had better happen. All of those things. So can't wait, especially when it rekindles London and Kitchener, and they've seen each other quite a bit over the last few years. I think the fan bases will take about 5 minutes before one of them feels that the referees are going against them, and that's always healthy competition. That shows passion.
It absolutely does, and again, look forward to seeing what Kitchener and London has to offer. Basically on the biggest stage that they could reach in the Western Conference Final this season. But Mike, let's take a step back here quickly and talk about this London Knights team through the first two rounds. Obviously, people are going to look at it and say 8-0. They've been steamrolling teams in the first two rounds, but again, Owen Sound and Erie didn't go down without a fight. Especially Erie, missing Matthew Schaefer's projected first overall pick in the upcoming NHL draft, as well as their captain and Anaheim Ducks prospect Kerry Torrance missed a part of the series, or missed the entire series, as well as a couple other guys that were out in Game 4, including Noah Erliden and Martin Mishiak. But what do you think has been the success for the Knights through the first two rounds and being able to still be undefeated here as they approach the third round?
You know what, Brandon? Their experience. This is a core that has been through long runs for the last 2 years. So you've got players who know exactly what's about to happen. Denver Barkey, Easton Cowan, Oliver Bonk, Sam Dickinson. This is their third run through, and we could name other names as well. But this is a time of year when not everything is going to go your way. And if something doesn't go your way, how do you react? And that, if we look at the NHL, that's often a big difference in the way that series go. And maybe the best examples are the Ottawa Senators, the Montreal Canadiens. They're very new. How do you react to things when they don't go your way, or when you don't get to do the things that maybe you normally did or that normally worked in the regular season? And so having the London Knights, having that core that has seen a lot of that. There was a game against Owen Sound very early on where the Knights built a 4-0 lead. All of a sudden it's 4-3, but it never got to 4-4. So Owen Sound put on this tremendous push. The Knights were able to kind of regroup and constrict things and change some of the stuff that they were doing. And then in the third period, they limited Owen Sound to very few chances and they won the game. And against the Erie Otters, Erie had certain moments too where you would say, wow, this team, And they have an awful lot of skill, and they have a lot of heart. I mean, to get through like they did, you mentioned the guys who were out. Martin Misiak missed game 4. To be able to go out and push the London Knights into overtime in game 4, that took an awful lot from that Erie Otters squad. And so it gave the Knights a good run in the second round. It might have been a series that is 4 straight, but they still had to work, they still had to connect, and they still had to take advantage of their chances. And that's essentially what got them through. This team has scored a lot, and that's something that they hope continues, but it's going to get even tougher facing Jackson Parsons and the Kitchener Rangers.
Mike Stubbs, the voice of the London Knights, is with us. Mike, when we talk, I remember talking to you a few years ago when the London had made that OHL Championship against the Peterborough Petes, and when I had spoken to you for our episode, you said this team might be a little bit ahead of schedule, and they were a very young team at that time, making it to the final, losing to Peterborough eventually, but then coming back the next year, last season, and being able to win the OHL Championship, make it to the Memorial Cup final, and obviously losing to Saginaw after they had beat them in the playoffs and beat them in the round robin of that Memorial Cup tournament. Speaking with your great color commentator, Jim Van Horn, it seems like going into this season, they wanted to run it back one more time, and they had some unfinished business because, yes, they won the J. Ross, as they call it, the OHL Championship, but that last thing that this group hasn't won is that Memorial Cup, and they could have tasted it last season against Saginaw, and they thought that they would have won it. So going into this season, obviously they won 54 games in the regular season, and so far in the playoffs, looks like they're just a team on a mission that is looking to accomplish one more great thing together as this core is going to graduate on to do great things in pro hockey. But for somebody that's around, this group all the time on the road, at home, what makes this group so special as they try to finally put the final check mark on this this, I guess, core of London Knights?
Brandon, you did a great job alluding to it. There's a real appreciation of that last opportunity. And it's almost like your last year of high school, your last year of university. You want to make sure and soak in everything because you know that next year you're going to be moving on to other things, or in some cases, you're going to see close friends moving on to other things. That's the kind of appreciation that this team has, where, yeah, this is one last chance. And while they had success last year in winning the J. Ross Robertson Cup, and you can never take that away, the Memorial Cup is a tournament, and we always have to remember that. It is a tournament, and it's featured one-game finals forever, and that means that anybody can go out and win, and that's just part of it. You want to soak in winning that J. Ross Robertson Cup. You want to truly appreciate that you were playoff champions in your league, and the Knights were able to do that after the heartbreak of losing to Peterborough. But at the same time, both seasons, they have had to watch another team celebrate. And so you want to get through and kind of finish it off, like you say. And while the team doesn't talk about getting back to the Memorial Cup, the team doesn't talk about getting back to the OHL Championship Series. Right now, the only thing the team is talking about is Game 1 of the Kitchener Rangers. And that's part of that maturation process where, no, they take nothing for granted. This is a club that, yes, has been able to do good things and great things with a lot of these players. Doesn't mean that you can repeat it. And the Knights have seen that in their history. They won back-to-back OHL titles, had a similar core come back in 2014, but a certain piece didn't come back in Olimata. And then injuries were forcing them to use forwards on defense in round 2 against the Guelph Storm, and they were the hosts of the Memorial Cup, but it never came together that year. So it can happen that way. You never know what injuries are going to do. Take a look at the Windsor Spitfires. Who would have thought that there would be a game where you would be missing 9 regulars during the game once Jean-Christophe Lemieux left the game due to injury? It just is unfathomable. So you never know what's going to happen. So that really has this team soaking in every moment and really trying to do everything they can to win that next game. And so far in the playoffs, they've been able to do it. Now Kitchener's going to try to keep them from doing it from this point on.
And I think people just take for granted that the London Knights are always going to be in the Western Conference Final or the OHL Championship. But as you mentioned, it's so hard from team to team to be able to get back there on a yearly basis. So many different factors can happen, injuries, things like that, players not coming back from their NHL teams. So many things can happen that can stop you from making it to this point. The last 3 years that they've done consecutively really shows that they have to put in the work, and so many things have to go your way as well. But these special players have been able to get to the Western Conference Final the last 3 years for the London Knights. Mike, as we look at what makes this team tick, obviously you talk about Sam Dickinson led the team this year with 91 points from the back end, the San Jose Sharks first rounder, 13 NHL draft picks on their team, Denver Barkey as the captain, Easton Cowan, obviously the highly touted Toronto Maple Leafs first rounder. They've got some great pieces up front and on the back end, but Austin Elliott, obviously a guy that they picked up, from the Western Hockey League after for his overage season, and only lost one game this season, and taking nothing away from their other goaltender, Medvedev, who's going to be a drafted goaltender in this upcoming NHL draft. But what have you seen from Austin Elliott, and why he's kind of been the Knights' X factor back there, as we've seen in past years with Michael Simpson and other goalies that they've kind of picked up and have really led the way for them to be successful?
It is that experience. He's been through hard playoff series with the Saskatoon Blades, so he knows those elements of the game. And if you add up all of his wins and losses this year, on one side, you have 3 wins in Saskatoon. Then there was a choice that the Blades had to make. They had 4 overage players. They had 2 goaltenders who would be number 1 goaltenders. One is 18, one's 20. You're going to go with the 18-year-old. That's just the way that hockey is going to work. Austin Elliott was able to find a home in London. So he won 32 games in the regular season, and he's won 8 in the postseason. Add that up. He's got 43 wins this year. He's got 1 loss. That's it. 1 loss. And that maybe speaks a lot to the way that Austin Elliott is able to play, where if you talk to Austin Elliott after a game and you ask him about a particular play, he's probably not going to remember much about it because he's always focused on that next save. And so if he allows a goal, he allows a goal. He gets over things like that so quickly because he's not focusing on that. So he's not thinking, I've got to win this game 3-1 or my goals against average or my save percentage. Not about that. This guy is about going out and making saves at key times. And how many goalie coaches will tell their goaltenders that, hey, don't worry. Pucks are going to go into your net. That's going to happen. It's about making saves at the right times in games. And Austin Elliott he's one of the best at doing that. His demeanor is so cool. He doesn't talk on the ice. You can talk at him. You can say anything you want to him. He's just not going to engage. He's not going to get rattled. He's there to stop pucks. He's very good at it. And that's been a real steadying factor for the London Knights. And you mentioned Alexei Medvedev, and he and Austin Elliott split the net basically throughout the regular season. Elliott just has that playoff experience, and the Knights have gone with a rotation before. So far, it's been Austin Elliott all the way through, and he has performed so well in getting the Knights to the 8-0 record and getting the Knights to the conference championship.
Where they're going to play against the Kitchener Rangers, Mike, as we transition here to, again, another chapter in the storied rivalry between the London Knights and the Kitchener Rangers, 2 of the best buildings in not only all the OHL, but all the CHL as well, and the 2 fan bases that go at it. It's pretty incredible to see. I look forward to covering those. But this season, in the 6 games that London and Kitchener played against each other, London went 4-1-1 against the Kitchener Rangers. And again, you can't put too much stock into regular season record, but they have played each other a lot this season and are familiar of each other, especially from the playoffs last year as well, where London came out successful. So what did you see from the London Knights this season that gives them confidence and gives them, I guess, the positive edge here that they can beat this Rangers team in a 7-game series?
Well, I think you look at the secondary scoring, and this is going to be key. If you look at that line, and Andrew Vermeulen is a former Ice Dog, and then you look at Cameron Arquette, Cameron Mercer, and you look at how they have played against some of the top players on either the Windsor Spitfires or the Flint Firebirds. We don't necessarily focus in on checking lines as much as we used to. Maybe it's because there's more skill, more ability to score in players coming up, but they have a checking line, and it makes it tough. And Kitchener, Kitchener's very good and they're very well coached. And one of the things that they do is old Bill Belichick style, they'll take away something that you do really well. And whether it's a top line, whether it is a play that you make, whether it's something that you like to do, they'll take that away. And then you'll have to figure it out from there. And so when you look at this past season, and Knights captain Denver Barkey is a guy who started the year with mono, and it really took until you can almost draw a line, December 31st, before you could really see Denver Barkey looking like Denver Barkey. Since then, he's been on a rocket ship. Since then, he's just under 3 points per game. And in the playoffs, he started at 3 points per game. So he has been remarkable. The Kitchener Rangers limited him to 3 assists in those games in the regular season. So you take away something, you need something else. Well, Blake Montgomery is a guy who led the Knights in scoring in that season series. So there's some of that secondary scoring. You'll look to Will Nickel. You'll look to Casper Haltonen. The Knights have that depth. The other thing the Knights can do is however you want to play it, they can play it. You want to play a speed game? Go. You want to make it physical? Do it. They can perform and participate, and we saw Owen Sound at times try and change the way that the game was going to be played. And I can remember a moment where there were a lot of hits. Owen Sound was throwing a lot of hits on a particular shift, and all of a sudden Casper Haltonen steps up and throws a shoulder into the chest of Ben Cormier, and Cormier went down, like dropping a bag of flour on the ground. Now, he got right back up. He was fine. It was a completely legal check, but it was just, okay, if you want to do that, we can do that too, and here's what can happen. And so that's something that the Knights will bring into this series, but let's face it, if you let Kitchener create off the rush, they have a lot of very smart players, and they changed their forecheck a little bit against Windsor, and it really had a lot of success. And so a guy like Tanner Lamb, you let him come in across the blue line and look to make that little drop pass that he likes to make, you're going to be in trouble. Kitchener's going to create some scoring chances. You let Jack Pridham get too deep, too fast, there are guys who on the forecheck can force you. There are guys who can turn pucks over, and there are guys who can make plays. Very rare, especially at the junior level, that you've got somebody who can do that on a regular basis in all 3 facets of a forecheck. But Jack Pridham can go in, he'll pressure you, he'll turn pucks over, and immediately he'll make plays. And so there are a lot of players that can make things happen on the Kitchener Rangers side. You have to find ways to make it impossible or at least difficult for them to do that. So that will be part of the chess match very early on in this series, and a really fascinating one to watch out for.
Mike Stubbs, the voice of the London Knights, is with us. A couple more questions for you, Mike. As far as, I guess, the buzz, every season the fans expect the London Knights to be very good, and obviously they've been able to have some great seasons. But from you being in that area, taking the calls on London Live and things like that, before and after the games, what's the buzz around this London Knights team as opposed to maybe what we've seen even with this group the last 2 years and some of the great Memorial Cup champions over the years? What's the confidence level in, I guess, the team and the fan base to hopefully, I know you talk about them wanting to look at one game at a time, but as far as their expectations to raise another banner to the rafters, at least one, maybe 2 or 3, what have you thought of what this season's I guess vibe has been?
You know what, it's been great. I mean, the Knights are sold out, and that is due to the fan base. It's hard to fill 9,061 seats game after game after game, whether it's a Tuesday night and it's a school night. But they do it game after game after game. And the Knights players don't take that for granted. And there's a guy by the name of Sav Neth. And Sav has just done a tremendous job taking the fan club and the support that the Knights get away from home to a whole new level. He's the president of the London Knights official fan club. And you will look around the rink and you'll see 25 lightsabers. That's Sav. You'll look and you'll see a bus trip on the road full of green and gold and all kinds of get-ups, flashing lights on heads. That's Sav. And so the fan support is tremendous. And year after year, the fan support is just consistently great. And it's something that hey, the players, again, notice as soon as they arrive here, because as soon as you start playing for the London Knights, people know who you are in this city. You're walking down the street, they'll say hi, because as much as football helmets maybe take the face away, there's enough that shows the face of the hockey players that they get recognized. And so it's pretty wild to watch some of the things that happen. Denver Barkey had a uniform and equipment drive this year, and he did it at London Source for Sports. And you watched people come in kind of throughout the day, and you would think, wow, this is pretty good. This is pretty steady. And then you walked around the corner and you saw the mountain of equipment that was donated. And again, that's just supporting an initiative that a Knights player had, an idea that a Knights player had. And so it's that kind of stuff that you don't want to take for granted, because if something is at a consistent level, sometimes you stop noticing it. If there's background noise and it's always at the same volume, eventually your brain will stop noticing it. And I think that's something that the London Knights fan base deserves a lot of credit for, because they've never let it dip. And while maybe it might seem like years past, it's still overwhelming, the electricity that is in there. There was a game that was played against the Erie Otters, and the Knights draft class had just been introduced, and a guy named Jason Kaler was singing the Star-Spangled Banner and O Canada. And he sang the Star-Spangled Banner, and he turned to O Canada, and sometimes he'll turn the mic on the crowd. And it was loud. The Edmonton Oilers fans, they may hold the record for decibels during a sung anthem, but Canada Life Place gave them a run. And so it's that kind of passion, it's that kind of love and appreciation for this team, because I think the fan base appreciates the fact that this has been 3 years in a row where the Knights have had a team that is a top contender. They won the Hamilton Spectator Trophy, winning the regular season title again this year. And so you don't want to take that for granted, because junior hockey is so cyclical. And they've been lucky where the work of Mark and Dale Hunter and their staffs, they keep the team competitive more often than not. And so you just want to maybe give a shout out to the fans because of that consistent love and passion for this team that just seems unwavering.
So when we look at it, Mike, the series is going to start tomorrow on Friday as we look at it, and the Knights haven't played a game in over a week. Again, they've been practicing. Being able to rest up is a good thing as well. So there's a double-edged sword there, because Kitchener obviously had to go to a Game 7 gauntlet against the Winter Spitfires, come back from 3-0 down, to win that series in 4 straight. So when you look at it, Kitchener might be the more game-ready team, if you want to put it that way. But as far as the Knights, they've been through a lot of these series where they finish them off early, and they're still able to come out in Games 1 and 2 and have that same intensity and that same mindset. So do you think that is based off of, the coaching staff and making sure that they have those hard practices, those simulated games that they're able to do during practice, because there's nothing like being in game action, things like that. But obviously London will be well rested when they do face Kitchener tomorrow night in Game 1.
You cannot simulate overtime of Game 7. Kitchener's got that in their pocket. You cannot simulate coming back from a 3-0 deficit, because that's only happened 6 times in OHL history. So Kitchener's got that in their pocket. Are they maybe a little bit more in a rhythm? Sure. But I think, again, it goes to the experience. If this was the Knights' first trip deep into the playoffs, first trip to the Western Conference Championship in a few years, I think it may have more of an impact, and I think it may be something that Kitchener would go looking to take advantage of. But I think you'll see a Knights team that's ready. Kitchener's going to come out hard. They're going to come out flying, and that's just them. So you have to be ready, and that will be something that the Knights have been talking about, will keep reminding themselves about. But that's the thing that I think you point to. The experience they've had is going to be helpful here, because if you get to the point where you know what it's going to feel like, you know what the other team is going to bring, and you are ready for that pace and that ferocity, then that rest is actually really helpful. And rest is something that the Knights talked about last year a whole lot, being able to win series early on, and then give themselves a few days just to feel good again. And then, you're right, the hard practices begin and that game style begins. You can't simulate a game, and you can't simulate what the Rangers have been through. But having been through similar things in the way of the way the playoffs escalate, I think you'll see the Knights prepared for period number 1. And if Kitchener should happen to get the jump, I think you'll see them prepared to adjust and feeling okay to adjust.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it, and we'll have to see that first period of Game 1 if that is kind of what you're mentioning there with Kitchener coming out flying in London, needing to up their intensity. So last question for you, Mike. Everybody talks about Easton Cowan, Denver Barkey, Sam O'Reilly, the top line being so good with 21 points, 20 and 15 respectively. Talk about Sam Dickinson on the back end, Oliver Bonk, Casper Haltonen, so many great players up and down this London Knights team. But for somebody that's, covered them for all 68 regular season games and now 8 games through the playoffs, what's maybe one name, one X factor player you think that's going to have a great series for the London Knights to help them elevate to that OHL championship that might be flying under the radar?
I think I'll give you 2. I'll give you a forward and I'll give you a defender. And the forward would be Will Nickel. Will Nickel was tremendous in the face-off circle early on. He's a draft pick of the Edmonton Oilers. He's somebody that has this quickness that if you're not ready, he can go by you. And he's someone that, again, no moment is too big. And so Will Nickel would be a guy up front. And on defense, Henry Brustevich is underrated because of a guy like Sam Dickinson or because of Oliver Bonk or because of Jared Woolley or because you have a lot of guys who you would look at and say, wow, they're ahead of him on the depth chart. And it's not the statistics. But if you're watching Henry Brustevich, I don't know if you want to do this during a game, but if you ever go back and watch a game a second time, watch how many times Henry Brustevich breaks up a play. Doesn't show up on the stat sheet. Just watch how many times he knocks away a pass in front of the net, or he steps up and keeps a puck in, or he steps up and gets a puck out. All the things that don't show up on the stat sheet that he does that impact games. So I would say Henry Brustevich, if he keeps doing the things he's been doing in the first 2 rounds, that's a really positive sign. And then you mentioned a lot of players. It is going to take depth to beat the Kitchener Rangers, and that depth scoring has got to be there for the Knights. That's something that will be important. So a lot of those guys not named, Denver Barkey, Easton Cowan, and Sam O'Reilly, should be a focal point.
Absolutely. Austin Elliott versus Jackson Parsons also going to be a fun one to watch in the net. So with that said, Mike Stubbs, the longtime radio voice of the London Knights on 980 CFPL. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to give our listeners the amazing analysis of the Knights and previewing this series for us. It should be fun. Look forward to Game 1 down there at Canada Life Place, and then the games also back at the Odd in Kitchener should be one for the ages here in the Western Conference Championship Series.
Brandon, thanks for the job that you do covering this league. You do it so well, and really appreciate the coverage here because this is going to be a great series.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back. We're going to hear the Kitchener Rangers perspective from their radio voice, Mike Farwell. So stay right here. Be right back on OHL Overtime right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. The great guys over at Hockey Stick Man are sponsoring this video. If you play hockey but are sick of paying upwards of $400 for top-end sticks, check these guys out. There's seriously no better place to shop. The guys are fun, easy, and offer a stress-free experience from start to finish. They get pro stock sticks from major junior teams right up to the NHL teams and sell them for half the price that the same stick would sell for at a retail store. To further support their mission of saving hockey families money, they offer closeout options, which entail taking last year's retail models and blowing them out for less than wholesale prices. It's literally the best prices on the internet for their sticks. And the best sticks of all may be their Pro Blackout series, which provide a top-end stick with no graphics and literally less than half the price of a branded top-end retail model. It's always been their best-selling stick despite super cool pro stock options. It's a no-brainer to shop with these guys, and trust me, they are beauties. Head over to hockeystickman.ca/thearmchairgm and get $15 off your first order. That's hockeystickman.ca/thearmchairgm to get an additional $15 off your first order when you sign up on their website. Check out our friends at Hockey Stick Man. Fourth Wall is the official merchandise supplier of the Armchair GM Sports Network. Our user-friendly site is print to order with no minimum items or inventory needed, shipped right to your doorstep safely and efficiently from their North American warehouse. All of our logos are available to supporters, listeners, and viewers can have the best variety available to them for their swag preferences. All items are priced as low as possible, allowing everybody who wants to support our business with the opportunity to do so, receiving quality and comfortable products in return. Shop today at fourthwall.com with the direct link to our Armchair merch store in the description of all episodes and in the bio of all of our social media accounts. Become an Armchair GM today with Fourth Wall.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Welcome back to part 2 of today's OHL Overtime episode and our preview of the Western Conference Finals between the London Knights and the Kitchener Rangers for the Wayne Gretzky Trophy. And once again, another chapter in the rivalry of the Kitchener Rangers and London Knights. The first half we heard from the voice of the Knights, Mike Stubbs. And secondly here, we're going to hear from the play-by-play voice for the Kitchener Rangers on 570 News Radio. That would be Mike Farwell, also the host of the OHL podcast. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time. I know you're running on a few hours of sleep and caffeine after what was a crazy series ender against the Windsor Spitfires, going to 7 games, going to overtime. So really appreciate your time. And how are you feeling after that gauntlet?
It's great to be here, and I'm so happy to have been invited. So thank you for that, Brandon. And as to how I'm feeling, underslept, over-caffeinated or not, probably still riding a little bit of the adrenaline. Look, obviously I'm a little bit biased, and I'm quite pleased with the outcome of the game. But what a treat we got on a Tuesday night at the WFCU Center in Windsor. 2 very good teams putting on a very good performance for almost 5,000 passionate fans. And if I can add to it, referees, Messieurs Jason Feist and Chad Ingalls going the whole let the players decide it. And in a good way. This wasn't, Hudson Bay rules out there where players were doing ridiculous things. It was a well-managed game by the officials, top to bottom. I would say one of the best showcases we've had in quite some time for the league, and a thrilling Game 7 overtime finish.
That's exactly what you want to see, and we saw some penalties in the Eastern Game 7 as well between the Barrie Colts and the Kingston Frontenac. So again, I'm with you. Let the players play. Don't let it get out of hand. But last night's game was just a great Game 7 playoff matchup that we saw between the Windsor Spitfires and the Kitchener Rangers. Mike, at the beginning of this thing, we didn't know that we'd get here. We thought maybe we would see a Game 7, but we didn't know that we would see Windsor jump out to a 3-0 lead in the series and then have Kitchener roar back with 3 straight wins of their own to force a Game 7 and then being able to win it in overtime of Game 7. It doesn't get any closer than that, and I believe only the 6th time that has happened, listening to your call last night on 570 News Radio for the Kitchener Rangers side. So what was the vibe, because you're around the team, you travel with the team, between the first 3 games and then what we saw with them roaring back the Final 4 to advance to the Western Conference Final?
There was a quiet confidence about this team for sure, Brandon. And I'll point to an interview that we did post-game with one of the Rangers overagers, Trent Swick. And what stood out to me, and this is early in the series, I think it was after the Game 2 loss. Regardless, he made it very clear in that interview that he was not ready for this season and, as an overager, his OHL career to come to an end. There was a players only meeting after Game 3, and what we really ended up with when you look at the final tally was a tale really of 2 different series, right? There was the first 3 games, and then there was the next 3 games, maybe the next 4, although the last one that we got was the most closely contested of all 7. The other funny thing about this, though, is coming into the series, most people were picking it to be a 7-game series. I picked a 6-game series just because everybody else was talking about a 7-game series, but it was expected to be a lengthy series. The teams just took a very unconventional way of getting to Game 7. If I had told you when the series started, it would go guaranteed Game 7, you'd be like, yeah, of course, because these are 2 evenly matched, very talented hockey clubs. It's just the way that we got to Game 7 that was strange. And you definitely saw that, like I said, tale of 2 series. Is the first 3 games, Windsor scores 16 goals, 6 of them on the power play. And then in Game 4, Jackson Parsons posts his first of 2 shutouts in the series. And all of a sudden, over the final 4 games of the series, all the Windsor Spitfires can muster is 3 goals total over 4 games. Again, 16 goals in the first 3 games, 3 goals in the final 4 games, and no power play goals in those final 4 games after scoring 6, 2 per game in the first 3. It was a banged-up Windsor squad. Everybody knows that. I credit the team for not making any excuses, but you got to look at the roster. Rangers were battling through some things too. There's no question about it, but at the end of it all, we got treated to what I think many of us expected coming in, a long series, a hard-fought Game 7, and it was just a really strange way to end up in that seventh game with one team winning 3 and then the next team winning all 4. And just to close your point about the Rangers being the 6th, yes, joining the 88 Ottawa 67s, the 05 and 2010 Windsor Spitfires, who did it against Kitchener, by the way. One of our fans sent me a message saying, I've waited 15 years for this revenge. So in 2010, the Spits pulled off the reverse sweep against the Rangers. In 2014, it was Peterborough over Kingston. And 2019, who could forget the comeback kids that year, the Guelph Storm? They sweep Kitchener in round 1. They come back from 3-0 down to beat London in round 2. They come back from 3-1 down to beat Saginaw in the West final. And then they come back from 2-0 down to beat Ottawa in the OHL final. But the Storm were quite the story in 2019. And now the Rangers join that club.
The Rangers, maybe they're the next team of destiny, like those Guelph Storm, being able to come back. We'll have to wait and see, but you mentioned just a banged-up Windsor team, and obviously they have some really top-end talent there, but only 3 goals in the final 4 games there, as you mentioned. It was definitely a tale of 2 series for the Windsor Spitfires and for the Kitchener Rangers as well. When you look at it, you talk about Jackson Parsons, and obviously Luke Ellenis missing the first 2 games of the series was big, a big loss for the Kitchener Rangers as well, but when you talk about what we might see here as far as what the Rangers will look like and going forward against this London Knights team, like when you go through a 7-game series and your opponent's been off for about 5 or 6 days, the London Knights sweeping the first 2 series that they had, do you think that might benefit the Rangers because they've been playing in games as of late, and London, as hard as their practices are, there's nothing like getting into games, and when you've been off for 6 days, might be a little bit tough.
I forget who said it, and forgive me for that with the London Knights, but he talked about how intense it is at practice for the London Knights because you're practicing against elite players, right? And you look at that London Knights roster, and let's be honest, if you're giving your best defensively when you're practicing as a London Knight, and you're giving your best offensively when you're practicing as a London Knight, you are probably practicing against better talent than you're going to face on most nights in this Ontario Hockey League. And that's not a slight to the other 19 teams. I think that's just reality when you look at the depth and the talent on that Knights roster. So I have little doubt that they will be very well prepared. But to get to the crux of your question, Brandon, yes, I would say there is a little bit of an advantage for the Kitchener Rangers here. It's the whole, and the next 48 hours, we're going to be talking about this, right? The rest versus rust conversation. But for the Kitchener Rangers, I think that they have found these last 4 games. You talk about Jackson Parsons. You look at how few goals Windsor was able to score over the last 4 games because the Rangers got back to playing as a team defensively. They assembled a shutdown line of Andrew Vermeulen, Cameron Mercer, and Cameron Arquette, who were really effective at keeping Windsor's big guns in check. But it begins and ends for me with Jackson Parsons in goal. At the beginning of the series, he was probably average. And a lot of teams would love to have average goaltending, but Jackson Parsons was so good all year. You looked at his save percentage, which was around 8-10 through the first 3 games of the series, and you're wondering, the heck, when the series started, he went down, or by the time the first 3 games were done, Jackson Parsons was down to an 888 save percentage in the playoffs after winning 4 or 5 versus Flint. And now by the end of this series with Windsor, you'll find Jackson Parsons' name right back up there at the top of the OHL playoff goaltending statistics. I think when the guy is playing that well, he can't wait. He'd probably want to play today if he could, because he's feeling it right now. And I think the Rangers are feeling it right now. So I might give them a slight edge in that this momentum carries over and probably bodes well for the Rangers heading into Game 1 in London.
The overage player of the year in Jackson Parsons has been so good for the Kitchener Rangers, as you know quite well, Mike. Continuing on here, we talk about head-to-head. Obviously, last year the Rangers going down to the London Knights in the series, and you look at this season, they had a 2-4 record against the Knights this season. One of the games going to overtime. And again, just the London Knights with 13 NHL prospects on their team. The Rangers have their window might be open for the next few years. We know the Memorial Cup in 2026 is something that they're looking at as well. So when you look at what the Rangers are stacked up against here, Mike, given that it's such a rivalry, two storied buildings, the history between both teams on and off the ice, including yourself. When you look at it, how do you think that if Kitchener comes away with the victory in the series, what do they do in order to defeat the top-seeded London Knights, who are obviously the favorite going into winning not only the OHL Championship, but also the Memorial Cup?
I love the way you put this, Brandon, what the Rangers are stacked up against, because they're stacked up against a stacked team. Again, and you'll have to forgive fans in Kitchener for just rolling their eyes and saying, oh boy, here we go again. Because look, if I had been a better guest on your excellent podcast, I would have brought the statistics with me. I ran them a season ago over the past decade of games, regular season and playoffs between the Kitchener Rangers and the London Knights. And the numbers, you wouldn't believe me if I said them out loud to you, because they are so lopsided in favor of the London Knights. Like, it's preposterous, the winning percentage that the Knights have against the Kitchener Rangers. Now, I've told other fans, if you ran those numbers for every team in the OHL, you're probably going to find it pretty lopsided, because the London Knights, as we know, for the past quarter century, have been a dominant franchise in the Ontario Hockey League. So Rangers have had some good teams, and Rangers fans can get excited about a good team, and then they go, oh, God, we got to play London again. So that's the situation the Rangers are in. But they need look back only 3 years. It was in 2022 in the first round of the playoffs when the 7th-seeded Kitchener Rangers knocked off the number 2 seed London Knights. Game 7, overtime. Mike Patizzi, the OT hero for the Rangers that year. I think, though, when it comes to this season, there are two things that are going to have to fall the Rangers' way if they want to knock off the London Knights. And one of them is going to be the guy in goal, Jackson Parsons, who we've already talked about, so I don't have to go into any greater detail. We know what he's meant to the team all year. We know what he meant to the team in the final 4 games versus Windsor. He's going to have to be at his above-average best for the entirety of this series with the London Knights. And that line that the Kitchener Rangers were able to assemble that kept Liam Greentree, Noah Morneau, and Ilya Protas in check over the final 4 games of the Windsor series, they're going to have to be able to keep the London Knights in check. And then, of course, if you keep Barkey and Cowan and Haltonen in check, well, what are you doing with the rest of the guys? I mean, it just goes on from there. So London has a lot of firepower to throw at you. The Kitchener Rangers will have to be damn near perfect, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase, if they want to knock off the London Knights.
And we look at the Rangers, the last time that they had made it to the Western Conference Final was 2017-18 when they lost in Game 7 to the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. So again, it's kind of been a long time coming for Kitchener. I know they've had some, like you mentioned, some series over the past 5 or 6 years, including the break in COVID. That series against Windsor, when Windsor was the number 1 ranked team going into the playoffs, and Windsor swept them and really ended their run way too early. I mentioned we talk about the London series, but Kitchener hasn't won the OHL Championship since the 07-08 season, and then as well they lost in the Memorial Cup final, excuse me. So when you look at it, Mike, it's a long time coming for the Rangers, such a storied franchise, one of the best fan bases in the Ontario Hockey League and all the CHL. From your perspective, and you have fan call-ins and things like that after every post-game there on 570 News Radio in Kitchener, what is the buzz and the vibe from the fan base as far as what they might see from this team this season, and as well, like, the optimism going into the next few years, as I mentioned, with the window being open? Like, what is the, I guess, do you see a different vibe in the way that the fans and the way that the organization, maybe the team, looks at this season, and then going ahead to what's to come as well?
First of all, I love that you brought up the last time the Rangers were in the West Final. Thanks for, like, why you got to be that way, B? Like, what have I? No, really, so going into last night, another Game 7, and you got the 2 days between the games, it gave me a chance to do some reflection, look back on some things. And last night's Game 7 was the 8th Game 7 I've had the privilege of being a part of with the Kitchener Rangers. And even though in 2018 in Sault Ste. Marie, the Rangers came out on the wrong end of it, Jack Kopaka in double overtime. I still haven't forgiven you, Kopaka, let me tell you right now. But in double OT, it was a tremendous series. It was a tremendous game, and somebody just had to lose, and it was the Kitchener Rangers in that one. But that was another one of the Game 7s I was reflecting on, even though the Rangers came out on the wrong side of it. Couldn't have been happier with that season and that game and how much fun we all had. And then you go back to that last OHL championship in 08, and what did the Rangers have to do to win that OHL championship in 08? Go to a Game 7 versus the Belleville Bulls after, by the way, Kitchener had been up 3-0 in the series, and Belleville roars back to force a Game 7. So I was thinking of all of these things going into that game last night because of all of the comparisons to it. So again, to get back to, do I do roundabout answers or what? I should be a politician or something to get back to what you asked about.
We're in the election period.
Exactly, that's true. So I vote for Farwell on Monday. I will say in a word, the fan base here in Kitchener is rabid. And I know that probably sounds like an overused word in sports, right? The rabid fan base. But listen, for a franchise that has the history, tradition, and pride of the Kitchener Rangers, we're at 17 years between appearances in the OHL final. That's a long-ass time. Again, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase. Oh, it's been 8 years, or 7, pardon me, since that 2018 Western Conference final appearance. Just consider, we'll throw out the North Bay Battalion as an example. 3 straight runs to the East final. So this is only the second time in 7 years for the Kitchener Rangers. The fans are hungry for this. And dare I say, they're getting hungrier because of what the coaching staff that this Rangers team has instilled in not just the team, but the fan base. Jussi Ahokas, Jeff Kurzakis, Brad Flynn, Jordan DeCourt, the goaltending coach, and Brandon Murley, who helps out on the strength and conditioning side, as a unit, as a 5-man unit, has really done tremendous work to change the culture internally and then externally on the ice. The fans are into this. It was supposed to be a rebuilding year in Kitchener, Brandon. Yep. The Kitchener Rangers traded away a 52-goal scorer for draft picks in the offseason, and the rebuild was on. And lo and behold, what do we end up with but a 47-win season and 100 points for just the 4th time in franchise history. So the fan base is ready for this. The coaching staff has got them primed to go. And the next couple of years, as you point out, looking forward to the potential of that 2027 Memorial Cup bid for the hosting of the tournament. They're ready for it in Kitchener, big time.
Yeah, it definitely looks like the stars are aligning for Kitchener at least the next couple of years, and a pleasant surprise this season, making it to the Western Conference Final. Last question for you, Mike. Everybody talks about the big names, the Adrian Misljevics, the Trent Swicks, Jack Pridham, Cam Reed. Luke Ellenis has been fantastic for them in the playoffs, despite missing 2 games. Still, their leading point getter. What's one player that you're looking at as like an X factor if Kitchener is to win the series that you're thinking is going to have themselves a big series going forward to be able to reach the OHL Championship Series?
That is an excellent question. And because you used X factor, I might point to Jacob Zhu, just a young defenseman who had a glorious scoring chance. Joey Costanzo makes an unreal save in Game 7 last night. Could have been Zhu's first career Ontario Hockey League goal. It's just a 16-year-old kid back there on the blue line for the Rangers in him. So he's getting decent minutes for a young player in critical situations. And I think I'll stick with the blue line and add in Jakub Kromiak to being a bit of an X factor. I've seen this kid play his very best hockey since the playoffs have arrived. He really is enjoying himself out there, and he's been terrific on the back end for the Kitchener Rangers. And throw in one more if I can, one of the more unsung heroes or players, if you will, in Cameron Mercer, chugging along at about a 75% success rate on defensive zone faceoffs. It's an underappreciated, in my opinion, asset for a team, and Cameron Mercer has got it in spades. So when you need a big faceoff one, it's usually Cameron Mercer out there getting the job done. It's a quiet job. It's usually a thankless job, but I think if the Rangers are going to be successful, win those key faceoffs and get those contributions from some of the unheralded guys on the blue line in Jacob Zhu and Jakub Kromiak.
Amazing stuff from Mike Farwell, the radio play-by-play voice of the Kitchener Rangers on 570 News Radio in Kitchener, and also the host of the OHL podcast. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time. I know it's going to be an exciting series. London-Kitchener never disappoints. Look forward to seeing you down at the rink, and look forward to seeing what this next chapter in the Rangers and Knights storybook has to offer us here in the Western Conference Final.
I can't wait to get to London. It's my favorite place to be. And Brandon, I can't thank you enough for inviting me on your show. I love it. I'm a big fan of you and the show, and really happy to be here. Thank you for this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody that's tuned in on our video version on YouTube and those listening on your favorite on-demand audio platform. Thank you to Mike Stubbs from the London Knights and as well to Mike Farwell from the Kitchener Rangers radio broadcast. That's going to wrap it up. We'll see you guys down in London, and we'll talk to you again very soon right here on OHL Overtime on the Armchair GM Sports Network.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.